really easy when it comes to swimming technique to look at lots of different problems and lots of different symptoms that are caused by those problems and try to fix them individually. What we try to do is work on 6 main things that we see over and over again when we do swim analysis with our athletes. 3 tend to be around the catch, 2 tend to be around breathing, and 1 tends to be around length of stroke. So there's 6 main things that we would always say to work on. The first one is overreaching. Overreaching is simply when you are trying to overreach your arm to generate more power through the stroke or a longer stroke, and what happens is the shoulder becomes longer, the elbow drops, and we end up having to push the water down. That is caused by overreaching. Overreaching can happen both above the water on the recovery of the stroke. I simply try and reach too far and I have to push the water down to be able to initiate the catch. Or it can be done by over gliding. As my hand enters the water, I let it go too far forwards, my elbow starts to collapse, my shoulder starts to turn the wrong way, and my hand starts to present itself to the water. So what we do is we try and limit that. The way to do that, common one, is to just bring the hand entry back slightly. Hand entry over the water, just bring it back. It should go in ideally between your elbow and your wrist of your other arm. So here I would be looking to go in here, I pierce the water, I let my hand glide in, I let my elbow follow my wrist, I drop the fingers and I catch back. If I try and overreach, I simply can't initiate that catch early enough, which means I'm going to start to push the water down and I'm going to be very shoulder dominant. Quite often it's easy to say when people say, oh, my shoulders are hurting during a swim session, and that can be one of the symptoms of overreaching and using the shoulder to push the water down before we initiate the catch. The second problem that we see is the elbow collapsing. The elbow collapsing can happen again either through overreaching or by simply allowing the elbow to enter the water at the point where we recover the stroke. As the elbow hits the water, what happens is it drags the hand down and it presents the hand to the water. It's a bit like putting the brakes on. So we present the hand to the water because the elbow has collapsed. I'm slowing myself down because I'm presenting myself to the water. And secondly is similar to overreaching, I have to push my hand round to be able to generate enough elbow lift to enable for me to use my lats to generate the force needed to pull the water all the way back. So collapsing that elbow. I often say with this technique issue is that you can hear it. It's dead easy. If you can hear every time your arm hits the water, it's because your elbow is collapsing next to your ear. So again, you can do a little bit of self-technique by listening to the way that your swim sounds. If you can hear the sound of your elbow hitting the water, just try and ensure that whether you swing it round or you have a nice high elbow, you place the hand into the water, the wrist follows the fingers and the elbow follows the wrist. As soon as this elbow collapses, we become shoulder dominant, we present ourselves to the water and we essentially slow ourselves down. The third one that we tend to get when it comes to the catch is by not initiating the catch early enough. And what we mean by that is as that hand enters the water, whether it's from an overreach, an elbow drop, whatever it is, we see that what they do is people push their way round, they push their way round, they push their way round, and only here do we really start to catch the water. If the water level is here and my hand has dropped to here, I've lost 15 to 20% of my possible stroke. So what we want to be seeing is that as that hand is entering the water, we drop the fingers to the bottom of the pool, we keep the fingers lower than the wrist, the elbow nice and strong, we catch the water and we pull all the way back on the stroke. That's what we want to see. So again, simply by not catching early enough, I push the water, that generates lift at the front, which means that my top half comes up and my legs sink. Okay, again, it's a bit like pulling the handbrake in a car every few moments and it's slowing me down in the water. The other two common mistakes that we often see when it's breathing. Over rotation when we breathe. That can come from two things. The first one is by simply turning the head too far round when it comes to taking a breath. That can come from lots of things. One, swimming too fast for your technique, which means you have to have longer taking a breath, which means that you need to rotate and have your head out of the water for longer. The second one is by allowing your body to swing itself round to generate the turn to be able to breathe. What you want to do when you swim is reduce the impact on your stroke. Breathing should be done as part of the stroke, not as a separate action. So what we want to see if we're swimming is that as the hands transition, the shoulder rolls, I've got enough of a rotation from my shoulder to turn my head. I keep one goggle dry and I have one goggle wet. It's a nice little way of thinking about it. If you can read what it says on the side of the pool while also still reading the safety sign outside of the pool, you know you're getting it about right. So just try and ensure that when we breathe to the side, we don't over-rotate our head. If I over-rotate my head, my shoulders follow. So as my head turns, what tends to happen is my whole body will rotate, and as you can see, my hand is starting to follow. What then happens is when my head returns with the other arm, I'm suddenly here. I've presented myself to the water, I'm putting the brakes on, and I'm not being able to catch. So again, you just need to ensure that the head can rotate, the lead arm stays strong with a nice strong position. I can rotate, and as that arm is recovering, I'm initiating my catch and I'm pulling all the way back. Over-rotation, as I've said, can happen for several causes, but it has a major impact on the stroke. As I've said, it can come from swinging. As you swing yourself round, you're generating too much rotation, and again, if you're not engaging the core, you can start to shark through the water. So over-rotation when it comes to breathing is something that really can have a detrimental effect on your swimming. The last point is a short stroke, and what we mean by this is we have the opportunity to be very long in the water. A lot of people think long in the water means that they have to make themselves taller than they actually are. We know that's physically impossible, but what it means is that you make your stroke as long as possible and keeping it powerful. As that hand enters the water, as we recover our arm over and our hand enters the water, we want to ensure that we catch, we pull, and as we come all the way down, we exit the water as far as possible. A good idea in terms of length is if we can catch up here. Okay, we want to catch all the way down and exit in between our knee and our hip. Okay, what it also works as a little bit of an afterburner. We get quite a lot of power towards the back end of the stroke because it's generated by both the lats and the shoulder. It's a bit like pushing out and working on that last part of the stroke. A really good drill for this is what we call the shark drill. What we do is we take a kickboard, we place it between our legs so that it sticks out the water like a shark fin. As our hand enters the water and we go all the way down, work on just tapping the kickboard at the back of your stroke. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but what you'll get to feel is that you've got to push all the way through for your hand to be able to exit to hit the back of the kickboard. And that is a way of working on ensuring that you have a nice long stroke through the water. As I've said, there's 6 key things. We work on those all the time. All of our drills allow for us to work on those individual attributes and ensure that we're not presenting ourselves to the water, we're getting a nice strong catch, and we're maximising our length in the water.